Ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls and others, non-conformers and non-believers, gender X and gender equals, welcome to this very special episode of Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. On this episode, we are celebrating the launch of issue 3 of The Storms, our printed journal of poetry, prose and visual arts. This special episode is the audio companion to our issue, which was launched on the 22nd of October 2023, and the entire issue features 80 international artists, poets, flash fiction writers, short story writers, photographers, painters and digital artists. My name is Damien B. Donnelly, and I am honoured not only to be your host today and the producer of this show, but also the editor-in-chief of this journal, and so very grateful to everyone who has taken this journal to their hearts and, of course, their bookshelf. For this issue, I was joined by the incredible Nithi Casa, Irish-Congolese poet and author of the incredible Palm Wine Tapper and the Boy from Jericho, her debut poetry collection, which was published by Dira Press back in 2022. So, for the next hour, we invite you to sit back and relax, or perhaps open issue 3 if you've already purchased a copy of the journal, and read along with our writers and dive into each scene from our visual artists. It's a 2-hour show, so here is what to expect. An alien living in a shed, sipping lattes in designer tracksuits, journeys beneath the skin, placing marigolds on vases on windowsills, naming the comfort of things like home, hope, hold. Learning how to hold others, how to hold ourselves when the others move on. How to be nests of tomorrow. To be winter and weave silver threads from stars, to recall sunsets, safe spaces, 6 black-capped chickadee eggs, grass snakes that need mothers and mooing cows to distract soon-to-be-broken daughters. We catch glimpses of boys, busy on the inside, in the in-between, in boathouses and vents of extractor fans, on bridges departing, watching tides, waiting for final boat calls, the great migrations of our day. Feet tumbling into the footprints of a past we're doomed to forget, a past that distracts us from the living, that buries us in layers of December until we break out of the wet autumn dirt into Monday morning mists, into shades of back gardens, smoking Virginia Slims and snipping. Cradling it all into the memory of a snow globe, a house of mirrors, a menu of mother's favourites. These are the journeys to the stillness of a place quite profound, gentle, delicate, beyond ambition, competition. Tales that are weightless, vulnerable, freeing, where the winds whistle and the dark can comfort. And ironically, for a literary journal, we end in a place of healing, beyond a language that turned words to weapons. These are the reflections of 80 poets, prose writers, playwrights and visual artists who've created their own palaces of peace, where we get to pause, like in the savasana of a gentle storm. All the details for my guest on the podcast today can be found at www.eatthestorms.com in the contributors section for issue 3. The journal is divided into 3 sections, which are its theme, and they are shelter, sanctuary, sanctum. Each section opens with the visuals from our featured visual artist, Joshua Vermillion, and the entire journal opens with this poem from Julian Day. Enjoy the show, everybody.
My name is Julian Day, and the title of my poem is Prayers in Starlight. Beyond hungry ghosts who pray for better days, beyond smoking cities riddled with shock and awe, beyond all obvious hope, beyond all we know and don't know yet. May we all be sheltered as long as summer days hold heat. Rest under this cooling canopé of green leaf shadow, away from all the stinging, unhinged things.
Thank you so much, Julian. Now, the first section of issue 3 of The Storms is called Shelter. And for the first half of Shelter, we have Jeff Gallagher, Sam Santo, Katrina Lane, Clive Donovan, Doreen Duffy, Tony Richmond, and Nithi Casa.
No place like home. There is an alien living in my shed. He paid Jeff Bezos $10,000 to be flown from his home planet to this quiet suburban garden in Gloucestershire. An immediate state of emergency was declared on Mars shortly before his departure. Apparently, living conditions were intolerable. The heat was unbearable. Wild dust storms gave him the appearance of Monk's Screaming Man and made it difficult to breathe. The surface was awash with molten lava. The sun shone as usual in the red sky, but it slowly burned his skin and boiled his blood. There is an alien living in my shed. He speaks to me not through some marvel of technology created by the mining and fusion through intense heat of numerous natural resources. He says such things dwell only in science fiction and would be environmental suicide, but rather through his dark, limpid eyes. He has a way of looking at you and subtly moving his head that eats into your soul, so that suddenly the tears are running down your face like the outflow from a broken dam or an unending salt tide slowly submerging an island. But he tells me not to weep for his history. He is hungry. There is an alien living in my shed. He is often cold, but prefers hot soup or an extra blanket to a paraffin heater. He says he does not wish to be a burden to me. He is keen to reduce his carbon footprint and recycle his waste. He has applied for residency. He has completed forms online outlining his skill set and his previous work experience. He does not have the power of telepathy. He cannot fly. He cannot transport himself across space or perform magic tricks with a glowing finger. He has little scientific knowledge, but he is willing to accept any gainful paid employment. There is an alien living in my shed. He sips a latte and wears designer tracksuits. He seems at home, and yet he is reluctant to venture out. He spends long days wistfully gazing at the sky. He seems lethargic, depressed. I am increasingly concerned for the state of his mental health. He has grown tired of watching classic comedy clips on YouTube. Instead, he has repeatedly viewed images of unmanned spacecraft exploring his world for signs of life. This gives him fresh hope that we might, one day, send him back to where he belongs, a place to call home. His eyes meet mine once more.
Hi, I'm Sam Santo, and this is a reading of my poem, Butterfly Baby. It's a poem I wrote about my birth, which my father and mother have both told me many times. Butterfly Baby. My father, an astrologer, predicted my birthday 3 weeks earlier than it should have been. He drove my mother to hospital and told the doctors and midwives she should stay in. I picture him pacing the veins of the corridors in his odd socks and old corduroy jacket, scared and bored, as my mother sucked in gas and air, and her body performed an everyday miracle. When he got to see me, I was blue, and he fainted. Once revived, he rushed away to draw up my natal chart. My mother had a 10-day confinement. When I came home, I was allergic to everything, sickly and frail, a butterfly baby. A neighbour told my mother, "That child's permanently attached to you," as if that was a bad thing. I imagined myself a badge, my thin skin pinned alongside her CND ones, secure and exposed.
Katharina Lane. Let the hare sit. Do not mow the meadow's edge. This is the hare's corner. She settles her form into the long grass to birth. Let the hare sit long enough to nurse. When she runs her errands at dusk, the ragged robin and dandelions will dance with the bellheather and buttercups. A curtain of colour, shielding her leverets from prying eyes.
Clive Donovan, babysitter. The children play with pots and pans. I have promised to keep them safe, while Magda fetches rations from the trucks. It is useful play. They learn about weight and metal and receptacles and percussion. My ears suffer din remembering blistering rounds of bullets, ruined glass and wasted copper and brass. I collect and hammer things from to pass the days. I have fashioned plates and bowls. They cannot resist fighting over our biggest pot. I teach them to make communal drum, and then to fix firm shelter tent from carpet. They know how to live like this, huddled snug in den. The pattern of carpet is helicopter. I shift to a book I cannot read. Those faraway stories, I make it all up. Sprawled, upside down, I look at sky. It is mostly blue these days and clear. Yesterday, I saw a human, ate a kitten, saw a banana, got smiled at by soldier. I grab a child before it climbs perilous concrete stair, leading to nowhere.
My name is Doreen Duffy and my poem is called Sticks and Stones. A shaft of sunlight sears the stained glass, sticks like candle wax to a hole a carefully aimed stone might have made, or God knows what, onto the back of his small neck, bent low as if in prayer. Over his fingers, twisting, untwisting, their shadows on the floorboards, a black baby sparrow, beak opening and closing, not yet learned to sing, "Where is my mother?" While his lips work over prayers, almost drummed in, from school where she'd brought him each day, his hand held in hers, until he'd eased his away, so they would not see. But he wouldn't care now, for their sticks and stones, if he could feel the shelter of his hand warm in hers.
Tony Richmond. Hi, Matt. Let's stitch a cushion, sew it with memories of our childhood home, but tie hard knots over some of the hurtful bits. Re-embroider it with golden threads that fib a little, embellish truth. Then stuff the cushion with the softest down, leaving out the prickly bits. Now splash it with lavender, rosemary for remembrance. Bury your face in its softness. Wallow in nostalgia for a place and past that never was.
Peeling. Be it a dialogue or a soliloquy, the rattling of a maracas or the swift of a bassoon. It can be football in a pitch or video game in a man cave. We could climb the wall of this gym and take on that mountain after. We can stay swimming at the low-tide pool or dive the lagoon, going to our deepest, each as our skills will allow, and come up for air, breaking the carapace, binding wounds, ruffle the organza tunic, peel the onion to its apex, not shy to the tears. We can be as patient with it as mollusks in the making of pearls, greyish or cream. We could make a necklace out of it, for the keep, or wear it around the neck. Whether the forecast has drawn a shadow or on a fateful day, it could be laughter. The cup is yours, to take, to pass, to pick up later. Tell me, beyond the habitual answer, fine thanks, how are you?
And this gives me the opportunity to say thank you so much to Nithi Casa for being such a fantastic sub-editor for this issue. Now, the second half of Shelter features Chris Spencer, Natalia Bickna, Clara Passon, Nikki Strange, S. Preston Duncan, Vicky Allen, Roisin McIntosh, and Anne Tannum.
Chris Spencer, Foragers of the Arctic Circle. The sun doesn't rise here. Days are massed and cold. We are never warm out of bed, sleeping on the floor of a fisherman's hut. The ice is thick. There's coins on the windows. It hangs in sculpted lobes, edges ridged like moth wings, our night's breath made hard. We light candles and drink tea from a tin samovar. When we reach the dregs, it tastes like blood. The wind pushes through the old shack, finds us out. We spend the morning pushing newspaper and rags into the cracks in the rattling door. Looking for berries in the forest, a day stumbling in the dark to find a pocketful. The urgent smell of fox won't wash off. We throw the fruits out for the birds. They're still there 3 weeks later when we leave, like leather buttons in the hard snow. Walking towards the boat, we are quiet together in this whistling place.
Stay by Nina Parmenter. If you decide to stay here, I will give you a tour of my skin. It may take a decade, stay longer. I will usher you in. I will give you a tour of my bones. Crack me, find the jelly, and I will usher you in. I'll guide you, if you'll let me. Crack me, find the sweetness. I will build myths from your hands. I can guide you. Will you let me? Let's talk. Once we both understand, I will build myths from your words. It may take 2 decades, it may. But we'll talk until both can be heard, if you decide to stay.
Blabber by Natalia Pikna. Richard locks his bedroom door twice, just to be sure, before trailing down the stairs into the communal kitchen. Someone has been cooking fish, but the only incriminating proof is the tangy smell that hangs over the room. No one else is there, a first ever since he moved in a few days ago. He decides this is a good time as any to look around the kitchen and common rooms and puts off the grocery store for later. He wants to get to know this place, meet his new home. Weeks spent looking for somewhere to live in a foreign city have left him feeling as if years were peeled off his life stick. The whole process utterly destabilizing. In the end, the best he could do is find a room in a co-living house. The whole concept baffled him. He had never heard of it before coming here. Where he's from, that is just what people do in large families. The process had been quite straightforward. Do you like to play loud music? Not when I shouldn't. Do you work from home? You can understand. We can only have 3 out of 8 people working from home at the same time. Sure, no, I like to go in. Have you ever lived like this before? He thought back to the past 2 years, living with his dying mother, his sister, her rowdy husband and strange 2 children. He assumes that counts. He shared the bathroom with the kids, and the 4 walls of his room felt like they were inching closer towards him every day. All right, Richard, I think you're a strong contender. We'll be in touch soon. It makes him chuckle when people pronounce his name as if it started with the word rich, adding an ill-suited tone of luxury. He knows most people who are named Richard here come from well-to-do families and are usually older than him. No one outside of Eastern Europe manages to pronounce his name the right way, so he prefers to stick to Rick when in need. He has quickly realized that people from Eastern Europe living in Brussels fall into 2 categories. Either they are construction workers and might have done well for themselves and now own their small company, or they work for the EU institutions. Richard does not fit into either, which only made his apartment search all the more complicated. When it comes to tenants and roommates, people like classification. This must be why he ended up in this co-living space. The place itself doesn't know what it is. Is it a collection of tiny apartments, spacious rooms, a house full of strangers that live together, a utopian experience, a misanthrope's nightmare? None of the above. So far, he doesn't hate it. He has his own bathroom, which is what felt most important for his sense of dignity. When his mother finally passed after having battled with lung cancer for what had felt like half her life to both her and her children, everything else seemed to pass by like a storm. His instinct had been to get out, seek shelter. The family home transformed into his sister's home. He became both invisible and bothersome. He was like an inherited piece of furniture that no one really likes or knows where to put, but it somehow feels wrong to get rid of. After a while, he decided he would unburden his sister's family and let them live on their own. Richard realized he had missed the gun in choosing a direction in life. He was 38 and had spent the past 2 years mainly taking care of his mother. All he knew was that he had to move, do something for himself, whatever that meant. He had saved up enough at his office job to quit without finding something else first. Ignoring the sounds of his sister's lovemaking, he browsed around online every night for anything, anywhere. He stumbled upon a job offer at a call center which needed native speakers of his language in Brussels. The only caveat was that he was supposed to be already living in Brussels when he applied, but that turned out to be easy enough to skate around. 3 months later, he was wandering from one apartment viewing to the next. Pretty quickly, he realized that his savings and updated salary would not get him an apartment or even a studio all by himself, something which he had been looking forward to ever since he had told his sister he would be leaving. She hadn't even asked him where to. Looking into the kitchen cabinets, he notices his shelf has a new post-it. Rich, with a smiley face, and feels a warmth rushing to his heart despite himself. The shelf looks gaping, and he makes a mental note of the things he should fill it with. He caresses the wooden countertop and metallic stove. They feel sturdy, of good quality and build, far superior to those he had seen in the other shabby apartments he had visited before. Maybe co-living was a utopia after all. And what should one want from life exactly, except for a place to sleep at night and to not feel alone? Back home, everyone seemed to be on a neat path, however unexciting. His sister had married at 25, had her first child at 27, and had never questioned her life decisions. Even though her husband screamed at the TV every week watching hockey matches, even though her children seemed both antisocial and overly confident, even if their frail mother cursed her every time she tried to get her to walk outside for a bit. No, his sister wasn't one to question things, and, Richard thinks to himself, he has never been that kind either. Not one to take big decisions. So he didn't pick a lane, he just let himself be, but where he thought he should. All his colleagues had houses in the suburbs. They were constantly working on or upgrading in some way or other. None of that felt inspiring to him, but deep down, he was scared that maybe he was just an uninspired person. The co-living had opened his eyes to other lives and ways of being. Of course, he had known other modes of existence were out there, but living in his small town, they felt remote, like lives on a TV screen. His co-living house had an age range of 28 to 42, odd but somehow appropriate, he had concluded. The youngest tenant, a 29-year-old woman from southern India, was an engineering genius who just hated living alone. She had chosen her life path at the ripe age of 5 years old and hadn't strayed from it. The oldest, 41 years old and from Spain, said they wanted to live in a different country every 5 years. This was their 7th, and don't ever ask me about finding a partner or having kids, they had warned Richard in a jovial tone. He hadn't inquired about the math. His house back home, his mother's house, the family house, now his sister's house really, wasn't even all that much. It was a square onto which too many things had been added. The garden had gone from a charming backyard with wild strawberries and an apple tree to a mess of a jacuzzi, barbecue, and pool table. The windows had been changed a few years back, but they didn't match the tone of the house. The facade had been repainted, but then his sister and her husband had run out of money for renovation, so the other half of the house still had its old coat on. At the call center in Brussels, Richard had been surprised to realize hearing his own language made him flinch. It was almost an out-of-body experience he couldn't explain to himself. Something about it felt like home, but out of its context, it seemed meaningless. Like a house one sees in a recurring dream and can't ever place in real life. He had thought the connection to his country would ground him, but it was having the opposite effect. His mother tongue suddenly felt bumpy and inadequate, a reminder of all the things he was missing. His favorite moment now was taking the tram after his shift and hearing the station names announced in Dutch and French, the woman speaking Arabic to her son, and the man on the phone in what he assumed to be angry Italian. Then, walking to his new home, the red-bricked house at the end of the cobblestone street, going through the door, not taking his shoes off, which had been the oddest thing to get used to, and sitting at the kitchen counter, the other tenants blabbing away. He only rarely joined in on their conversations, but somehow, the lull of their voices, the specific articulations of their foreign tongues and misplaced word stress, made him feel safe.
If nobody no longer touches me, then I'll dream of it. The sofa's arms hold me tight and draw my outlines quite well. The lampshade's warm hands weave a field of silky skin. if I can't waltz in those nightgowns anymore, the bed sheets will wrap my body instead. I'll make a ballroom of my own, a barefoot Cinderella locked in her carriage. If sleep doesn't come, I let silence whisper fabulous lies. City sparkles. My eyes are glazed with exhaustion, bow windows darkened by heavy rain. If terror tears me, I remain petrified. The monsters hide behind the curtains, empty bottles bulwark. If the city's horizons devour me, my skull will break by deep forests that grow to overwhelm and grey skylines.
Hi, this is Nikki Strange. I'm chuffed to be part of The Storms Issue 3 and to be returning to the podcast. This is my poem, Wonderful. On a day when the ceiling drips rusty tears from a hidden source, and the road outside's cracked smile gapes, threatening tyres and primary school feet, I think of wonder's many facets. There's the wonder of what is happening behind the plaster, the slow leak of the house's vessels, capillaries. There's, I wonder where the money went as kids navigate crumbling streets. These wonders bleat their losses as I herd them penwards. Can a meditation app in circles stray and ragged breath? I chase myself through the 3-cornered copse. Ash, linden, you. There is the wonder of the bud held in the tree's fingertips, gifted each year to say, look up. We will bear the nests of tomorrow. Thank you.
My name is S. Preston Duncan, and this is called Now That I've Met Your Family of Ghosts, I Renounce My Nation. At first I was far away, and had the fear of it. My strange feet, defenseless. I would learn to lean on different valves, climb down into the wind beneath the country, touch my forehead to its backward sea. As time went by, I would have songs for the harvest, milk under the bridge. With a belly full of farmland and tea pulled up from the charcoal pasture of your grandmother's voice, I would make a garden of rain, hammer up a roof over the marriage. It would be easier to be one thing. Tzitzit, Clada, a braid of blood flying in the ancient airs, a shelter from the American sun that grew to be so far away.
Hello, my name's Vicky Allen, and this poem is called Protection. When the night grows edges and sleep is lost in the dark, she plucks a silver thread from watching stars, breathes it in, and out-breath is the unwinding, silk unspooling. She picks it, places it around her curves, her hollows, laying a careful body skein like a circling prayer about her being. These are my borders, she declares to the discomforting dark. Within the silvered home you shall not come tonight. The dark will blink once, astonished, will admire the economy of her protection, will submit to her soft command. and she will breathe in and out and sleep.
Do you remember skies? Once I penned the phrase, "The sky lay Turneresque as it blessed the evening." A mind could conjure that image, I thought, the pinky pale peach wish-wash of sunsetty gold salmon, swirling into a dream of a sky, a hope of a heaven translated to canvas. I see the same sky projected back to me as I buckle into the car, setting out again, throwing the old Chevy round the cliff road once more to visit you. In 1997, we'd driven the Going to the Sun Road in Glacier Park, Montana, sunned, brown and in love. Declining its speed, you made a "look, no hands" move, steering with your elbows to terrify me or make me laugh. Both meant the same to you, Yankees hat backward, your rolled smoke sideways and limp in the pocket of your broad-faced smile. Now you're dying on tubes and drips and flat beeps in an inclined bed. So when I arrive at your room and sling my handbag and jacket across the chair, kicking off my heels, I remember that I never exactly told you how Montana made me an agoraphobic wreck. That summer we lay flat on our backs, awestruck at this window to infinity, the night sky over Big Sky County. It was only a moment, but I realised two truths. Firstly, that God is very real. And secondly, that I was a minute speck of atom dust, infinitely smaller than I had ever comprehended, just hitching a ride through an endless universe. That night I sweated, wide-eyed, over these truths, lying listening in my white-ribbed vest and cotton night shorts, zip-locked into our two-man tent. Sometime post-midnight, those thoughts triggered a full-blown panic attack. Heart-pounding, I skittered out into cricket song, smouldered ash fires and late-night conversational hums, begging my heart to slow, gulping cold mountain air in great heaves, the paused conversations in the lamplight, wondering what was wrong. What the hell was I doing there? A continent away from home in that expanse of land, a land that showed me the universe with the exact same nonchalant flourish it had used to show me waterfalls and transparent lakes, or the fat bison that had wandered, bored, across our trail. The two brown bears leafing berries in the distance as we clutched bear whistles and spray. I'd only ever known small green cornered counties, or curved coastal edge townlands where the sky and the land knit together. In Montana, I longed to gather the corners of the world down to me, pull their edges tighter so I could pin the sky to the earth in a kiss, bend the breeze-tossed evergreens together in a blanket above my head to close me in. Do you remember skies? Do you ever replay them over again in your mind's eye? I remember Glacier Sky. It was the dome of the ceiling of the world. It embraced both the inky night and the sun-scorched continent in an ocean of stars and space. And I had swam in it, breathless, hands pressed flat to the earth, dirt beneath my nails, laughing and terrified, which were both the same to you. I stretched myself up onto the white hospital linens to lie flat against your chest. I am much smaller than your 6-foot frame. There is a mechanical rise, hiss and fall as the machine forces your lungs wide, but I twist to lie flat against you all the same, face down, belly touching your broken chest. I won't fall off. My empty arms stretch wide as I balance in a hug that you will never meet. Look, no hands, I whisper. I want to tell you about the Turner sunset. I want your mind to forever explode in sunsets with me.
Foster by Anne Tannum. Take a goose named Felicity. Take an experiment. Take Felicity isolated in a room after she hatches. Take a machine that feeds her. Take a thermostat that clicks. Take Felicity running toward it. Take her disappointment. Take her head moving rapidly from side to side. Take days passing. Take Felicity introduced to other geese. Take the term misfit. Take a gander approaching Felicity. Take her fear. Take Felicity's head moving rapidly from side to side. Take her nesting behaviour. Take eggs placed under her. Take her indifference. Take more eggs. Take Felicity sitting on them. Take goslings hatching. Take her indifference. Take their limp bodies. Take hardy duck eggs. Take their hatching. Take 5 ducklings running toward the water. Take Felicity's indifference. Take Felicity in the yard. Take the ducklings on the pond. Take a storm. Take the ducklings seeking shelter. Take Felicity opening out one wing. Take the ducklings disappearing into warm softness. Take 6 steady heartbeats. Take Felicity's head nodding up and down. Take the clouds passing.
The second section of issue 3 is called Sanctuary, and this features Lucy Heushen, Lauren O'Donovan, Christina Henneman, Jan Finlayson, Mary E. Ringland, Lynn Valentine, Susan Richardson, Marie Studer, and Karina Bozak.
Hello, I'm Lucy Heushen, and I'm delighted to be a part of issue 3 of The Storms. Thank you to Damien and to Nefi for including my poem Grass Snake amongst the many wonders in this lovely issue. This poem is Grass Snake. The night after I find you coiled under the circle of the dog's bowl, I turn my waking thoughts to you. The slight diamonds of your back, a baby really, so skinny. I read that once your mother has birthed you under a hedge or in bare woodland, you have no further need of her. You are born with a survival gene. It shocks me somehow, this idea that there is no guilt involved, not for her, not for you. Just freedom, to slide away, hunt, grow strong, nothing more expected or offered. I persuade you into the red dusk of a clay pot. Lift your silent coils out to the laurel-shaded border. Leave you like a second mother.
Apples and Skeletons by Lauren O'Donovan. When I was a younger, more naive version of myself, I swore I'd never lie to my child. Not the little white lies that are as necessary to parental survival as sleep and showers, but the big things. The things that stack skeletons into a family's closet until you're living in a haunted house. The things that are never talked about straight on, only roundabout in the vaguest euphemisms. So when something shit finally does happen in your life, you think you are the only person in the world to ever truly experience fucked up. I didn't want my son to ever feel so alone. That was before a nurse handed me a leaflet titled Surviving Suicide Loss after my father took his own life. I scanned it in a daze and don't remember much of its useless platitudes, but one yellow fact box seared itself onto my brain. As someone bereaved by suicide, you are now 3 times more likely to die by suicide. I suddenly understood what Eve felt like when she ate that apple. Grandad died of a bad heart, I lied to my child. I kick the escaping foot of my father's skeleton back into the closet, slam the door shut, and lock it tight.
My name is Christina Henneman, and my poem is called The Visitor. It's inspired by the northern lights that I could see in February earlier this year from Sligo Bay. Awed in this curtain of light, we fill our eyes like cups with stars, as if the shattering of dawn would soon illuminate the sea, sink into our mercury brains. The moon, spoon-like, glistens on waves whispering over pebbles. We are frail and bare here, wrapped in the solar wind, wonder cutting us from dreams that turn out to be chimerical. You sway as a flicker of green against my night sky open arms, leaf of grass from woming earth. In the reaching of the red flare towards the firmament, I throw my head back and breathe. Another morning has just been born, slick with vernix and traces of blood.
Hello, my name's Jan Finlayson and I'm pleased to join the podcast to read my poem. It's about an abandoned hospital for the mentally ill near Roslyn Chapel, which you may have heard of. I visited the neglected site after reading about it and wanting to feel the sense of the place for myself. Here's my poem. It's called Abandoned. Remote, this abandoned hospital. Had to be. Not all were harmless. Crazy. Some were. Others sent to be saved from salacious needs. The women must be saved from themselves. Placed under the howling moon. Here, the vulnerable, the unstable portion of humanity with distress and indignity hidden in the green. Buildings sprawl, a canopied walkway, the entrance, I feel. I'm unsure. I was never incarcerated here. I knew about it as everyone around knew about it. Some worked in it, tending to the patients, those being the confused elderly, the epileptic, the psychotic, the fallen women. Ghost stories hung about like spider webs. A gate creaking, the click of the latch, steps on the stairs to the tower where the old women were bedded down. The night watchman expected, but no appearance. Get off my bed, a wail from one in bed alone. Shivers. Screams circled the rooms, the corridors, the ceilings, the tiled floors. Screams hurled against the walls, the baths, the trolleys. Screams crept into one's grey inner sanctum and spiralled out of control. People died. Accidents. Buried under mound of earth, mowed down by train, found on railway in snow. Land tainted. Regardless, I am propelled here, yet I cannot help these shadows of the past. They are gone. Perhaps my purpose here is to understand. Let the bricks and mortar cry out. Tell me, why is this land so blighted? Why do I want to scrabble amongst the derelict soul of the place, to breathe in the abiding air of tortured minds? Perhaps I see amongst torment what drew writers and poets. A chasm of land with the river running through, waterfalls, pools, pebbles, weeping trees, bluebells. Poetry without words. Castles cling to rocky foundations, caves curl below, staring open-mouthed, seen only to the keen eye. And all the while the river runs. Sun rays filter through leaves, reflecting on the watery line and crystal specks. The sanctuary of the chapel is nearby, gargoyles and pillars defining it. Venerability which once attracted the shine of armour, red crosses emblazoned across the hearts of the Knights Templar. History surrounds, astounds in humble piety. Dramatic scenery and tales encircle this regimented framework, much faded and tattered, but still standing to attention. Orderly blends with beauty and the peace, the stillness of nature surpasses all else. Stagnancy evaporates into bubbles of energy as I pay homage to all who were once sheltered here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mary E. Ringland, and I am absolutely delighted to be included in issue 3 of The Storms. Today I am going to read my poem, Saved by a Starman. It plays in my head like pitted newsreel of a bomb-a-minute blitz on a bloody Friday afternoon, Belfast, 1972. It plays in my head like a vile voice over fractured ear-piercing whispers, penetrating dust motes, heavy with the scent of twisted metal. It plays in my head like an eerie echo of a deconstructed day, awash with shattered lives and scattered spectacles. It plays in my head like a macabre melody from a starman waiting in the sky astride the mangled framework of York Road Station, his hand stretched through the gap in reason, ready to pluck me from the chaos. Thanks for listening, folks, and also a massive thank you to Damien and Nithy for all their hard work in putting issue 3 of The Storms together. I can't wait to get my hands on a copy. Thank you now. Goodbye.
Turn to Ardmucknish Bay by Lynn Valentine. Next year, I promise, blessings of sea swimming, soft sand pressing warm on bare feet, penny red shells. I will name the wildflowers for you, again and again.
Hi, I'm Susan Richardson. Thank you, Damien, so much for everything you do for the writing community, for all of the beautiful art you create, and for choosing my work to appear alongside that of the incredible artists featured in issue 3 of The Storms. My poem is called Fog Rolling In. My childhood streets were bathed in sunshine, cul-de-sacs trodden over by barefoot kids who played outside almost every day, walked home from school unhurried, unafraid. A patchwork of tree-lined avenues enclosed us in a leafy maze, a haven my mother called the hill. On the handful of stormy days that fed our thirsty streets, she picked me up from school in her powdery gray Fiat, rain turning the windscreen into an ocean. As soon as I was buckled in, she would pop on a cassette and turn up the volume. We sang in booming voices to the soundtrack of Evita, accompanied by the beat of the rain. She was always Che. I remember her happy on those drives, the thrill of danger alive in her eyes, as we meandered up roads so steep it felt like we were flying. As we traversed the spiral of streets, ascending slowly to the summit of our shrouded suburban spire, She would smile as big as the moon, take a long deep breath, and squeeze my knee. Do you see, she'd say, voice sparkling with joy. The fog is rolling in.
My name is Marie Studer, and my poem is called Grotto. Grotto. She flicks hand, forehead to breast, makes a sign of her cross before a shelter of penitent rocks. She exchanges deadhead intercessions for cellophaned chrysanthemums. Sits on a white bench carved with initials and blotches of almost bleached obscenities. A blue plastic bag quivers on the cracked concrete beside her trembling foot.
Queen Bozak, a boy who does not speak. About a boy who does not speak, a friend said, "The lights are on, but nobody's home." "I don't like that phrase," I replied, startled by a sudden wounding. The friend, ever sensitive, held my gaze, aware now that this slight, this unkind phrase, casually conveyed, says, vacant, thick, dense, stupid, not really there. "His house is occupied," I vouched, voice tight with memory of a son's wordless days. "Perhaps you call the wrong greeting, or he hoards his safety within. Or perhaps he doesn't want to answer the door, being busy with deep insights that one day, unexpectedly, might change the world."
Midway through the second section of Sanctuary, we are introduced to Biddy Lee, who's our featured prose writer from Armagh, and she offered us a play, Toxic Relationships. When we had our live lunch in Dublin, we witnessed the opening scene and we were introduced to two T-Rexes, Jeffrey and Edwina. They are slightly ungainly and rather ridiculous, sitting contemplating their own immortality just before an enormous explosion. Today we are going to hear scene 2, which features the moon and the earth in conversation. But if you'd like to see the entire play, then stay tuned, because the Armagh Theatre Group in Abbey Lane Theatre in Armagh will be performing this in mid-April 2024.
Scene 2 from the play Toxic Relationships, written by Biddy Lee, Malachi Kelly as the moon, and Tim Hanna as the earth.
Excuse me, move out of my light, please.
Good grief, every time there's an eclipse. Slide around, why don't you?
Oh, you expect everything to revolve around you?
Not everything.
Just me, obviously. So entitled.
Well, you're in bad form about something. What is it?
Okay, look, I'll just say it. Your humans are bad news. Only 12 of them have ever visited me, and they've left a mess. Not to mention all the rubbish that's been floating about in orbit.
Oh, stop picking on them. They're just fragile, inconsequential, short-lived creatures.
Yeah, when you get them on their own. But collectively, phew, look what they're doing to your atmosphere. Aren't you worried about another extinction event?
I can deal with it. I've done it before.
You were gutted when you lost the T-Rex because of the asteroid.
Oh, that was so sad.
Yeah, and the time before that when you were...
I was a bit unstable, that's all.
A bit unstable? Volcanic eruptions cause the extinction of up to 80% of species. That's more than a bit unstable.
It was an imbalance. You're solid rock, but me, I'm much more complex.
Are you calling me simple?
No, but look, beneath my outer crust lies a mantle of molten rock, swirling around the solid core. My crust is constantly colliding.
Oh, it sounds uncomfortable.
Look, parts sink into the mantle and melt. In other places, my crust stretches thin. Molten rock wells up. That's why I have this scar down the Atlantic seabed.
That looks painful.
I'm used to it now, but do you see my complexity? That's why you're attracted to me.
No, it's your large mass that does that.
Well, it's what keeps us together.
Aye, but not for much longer.
Pardon?
Anyway, you do get runaway reactions you can't control.
Those were just fevers, resets. And during each recovery, my species diversified rapidly. Like when the reptiles evolved into the ancestors of birds, it led to the evolution of our beloved T-Rex.
You got lucky. There was that time you almost wiped out the ancient relative of the octopuses. I can imagine the octopus not evolving.
I know. Remember Paul predicting the outcome of the football?
Yeah. Humans are doing a great job finishing off every species now.
Do you think I don't know all this?
You haven't learned anything from it, have you? In the last 100 years, it's nothing. A blink. No time at all for me and you. But in 100 years, humans released the same amount of carbon dioxide as between 1 million to 100,000 years ago.
Stop!
You're in denial because you're scared. Humans have no regard for anything.
Oh, you're very harsh. They're not all bad, you know.
Without humans releasing carbon, you'd be in a stable period right now. So long as there's no more asteroid strikes and no more extinction level imbalances, you could continue to be a paradise for a long time.
Okay. What can I do?
Well, how about a volcanic winter? Just a wobble down, not an imbalance as such. You know, like the one that you had after the explosion in Mount Tambora in Indonesia back in 1815. Throw enough gas and ash into the atmosphere to darken the skies, but don't blot out the boss completely. And alter the climate that way. You could use Yellowstone in America again, or Taipu in New Zealand if you wanted to change it up a bit.
Humans are working hard to fix things. If they work together, they can get on top of their carbon emissions.
A likely occurrence. If they propel this sixth extinction to the most extreme conclusion, you could end up like Mars with no atmosphere, or worse still, like Venus with eternal raging storms. At least in the past extinctions, there was some vestiges of life remained to restart again. But the specialist species, your favourites, will be doomed.
Humans are smarter than you give them credit for. They aren't like the dinosaurs. Poor old T-Rex couldn't even apply his own mascara. When it came to trying to help each other, they just poked each other's eyes out.
Your humans are that arrogant they wouldn't even believe that dinosaurs used mascara if you tried to tell them about the Cretaceous craze for long lashes.
True, some are arrogant, some have no imagination. But some humans are good moral creatures, great at problem solving. Look how they fixed the ozone layer back in the 1980s.
Yeah, idiots. Imagine burning a hole in the one thing that protects you from the harmful UV radiation the boss sends out.
Yeah, but they got themselves organised and they phased out 98% of ozone-depleting chemicals. They're 50% of the way back to a full recovery.
Halfway? Big deal.
Yeah, but many of those CFCs were also greenhouse gases. And because they banned them, humans avoided a further 1.1 degrees Celsius increase in temperature since then.
So they done something good by accident. Ruby do. They still raised your average global temperature by 1.2 degrees Celsius. Tipping point is 1.5.
They're phasing out coal faster than expected, rolling out green technology, wind farms, solar farms, hydroelectric, earlier than predicted.
But will it be enough? And they'll plunder you for your precious ores to make solar panels and electric car batteries. Look what they're doing to their own species to extract your rare elements. It's horrific. Child labour, human trafficking, scarring your surface, poisoning your water.
They're doing their best.
They're more brutal than any species I've ever seen. I've lost count of the number of wars they've had. They don't deserve mercy.
You're very hard-hearted. Every bit helps.
Every other problem that they solve, they create a bucket load more.
They worked out how to escape my gravity. That's more than you've done.
Oh, But now that you mention escaping your gravity, I do have an announcement to make.
Oh?
I'm leaving.
What?
Don't tell me you hadn't noticed.
My rotation has slowed, and my days have got longer in the last couple of billion years. I thought you just needed space. Why are you leaving?
3 things. 1. Everything has to revolve around you.
For goodness sake.
2. I was hoping to leave before the boss became a red giant.
Look after yourself, why don't you?
Well, I won't get away in time.
That's not much comfort.
But mostly 3. When your tides bulge, they feed me enough energy to push me into a higher orbit.
Are you kidding? So it's my fault? Typical.
You don't understand the gravity of this situation.
So now I'm stupid as well? Right. How fast can you leave?
At the rate of 3.78 centimetres a year.
And what about the humans? If you leave, will it affect them?
Honestly, that's not my problem. Besides, they've no concept of time. They think a year's a long time. According to the righteous prose, time goes by so slowly.
But Johnny Logan said, what's another year? See, they're all different.
Well, look, their time is running out fast. We're getting sidetracked here. The bottom line, the humans won't even notice me leaving. They'll have you ruined long before I'm out the proverbial door.
Stop.
You spoil them. The best you can hope for is a bad case of asteroids.
That is cruel. Some of them are worth saving. The scientists, the artists, maybe not the politicians. But you know what I think?
What?
I think you're a drag. Always pulling in my oceans. Go on, leave. Go on, go.
Oh, all right. I am leaving right now. Just you watch. Part 2 of Sanctuary features Phil Lynch, Philip O'Neill, Nigel Kent, June O'Sullivan, Owen Cahill, Sheridan Hall, Fiona McKay, Tolu Ogulesi, Chris Cottam, Doreen Herbst, Helen Anderson and Sarah Doyle.
My name is Phil Lynch, and the title of this poem is In Betweenness. It's adapted from work created for the ArtNet DLR Hinterland Collaborative project in 2019. In Betweenness. Cold stones by the beach capture a glint of evening light, momentary blossoms on a monotone sandscape. After we ran aground, we found new headlands. Dilapidated paths led us through a blur of briery firs to open marshes, fertile wetlands, refuge for wildlife. Tree trunks skulk by the marsh's edge, bare broken branches crane to watch us pass. Protruding roots, wrapped serpent-like around each other, threaten our progress. A man at the edge relieves himself, adding to the detritus. Further in, the shapes of mountains, stained by winter's harshest frost and sun-dried rains of summer, slope down to meet the woods above the new roads straddling the outer scatter. In between, the hubbub of the hinterland, sinews stretched with every breath, remnants of salt marsh, sanctuary for species of wildlife to rest and refuel among flowers, shrubs, weathered plants. Circles of green in brackish water, graceful flight of the heron, its harsh call of arrival a siren for the hard lives of those who come here to sleep and leave behind relics of their presence to taunt our consciences. Flutter of its swift wings before the splish as water is sliced with precision. Squawks and sweeter chirps from hedges and tangled growth over which hawks stalk their prey, screech of wheels on steel of rail line dividing marsh from sea. Small boats bob, stiff breeze drives clouds to blow shimmering showers in over the brown shore, across the space inside where news once went back and forth in written words, images unseen, linking people and places. Flying ships now crisscross above this space that harbours history from before the city spread its cloak to wrap around a hinterland of plenty, rising to the hills, sheltered by mountains, slanting to the sea, sinking in the swamp of progress, ever changing, evolving within its own skin, open to the world, orbiting on its axis while generations spin past, each believing they have seen the best of it. We find our own hinterland in the space between the image and the reality of place, our past and future bound by nature as the railway binds city to suburb and beyond. Like migrant species and sanctuary seekers, we too must move on.
Parking space. I haven't left the house for over 2 years. It wasn't a snap decision, but one that grew slowly and eventually enveloped me like the spread of mould on discarded fruit. I'm not ill, by which I mean I don't have a condition or a syndrome. Not that I know of, at least. Then again, I can't leave the house to get diagnosed, so maybe I do. Or maybe I've developed one since. I haven't left the house for over 2 years so that no one will take the parking space in front of my house. Now I know how that sounds, but let me explain. I live in a country where most people use cars, even if they don't really need them. But if you try to walk somewhere, you're odds on to get soaked by incessant, unpredictable downpours. If you take public transport, you're at the mercy of skeleton services, overpriced fares and cancellations without warning. And so people drive. Everywhere. To church, around the corner. To the corner shop, the neighbour's house. It's almost as if the shorter the distance, the better. And with the excessive use of cars comes an almost religious obsession with parking. Mention the city centre to someone and, God, you'll never get parked down there. People leave concerts or sports matches early to get the car out in time. Garden centres and shopping malls flourish beyond the fringes of the city because it's so much easier to get parked, so it is. I lived in major metropolises for years, so I'm used to chaotic roads and overpriced parking in strictly delineated rectangles painted confrontationally on every street. To squads in high-vis trousers and work boots poised to swoop and kidnap my car with unwieldy yellow clamps. And when it's all relative, these parking concerns seemed so petty. And so when I moved into my new house on a busy street, sandwiched between the airport and the harbour, I swore I wouldn't concede to that same obsession. Ah, now they always come home, they'd tell me smugly. Well, that might be true, but I was determined to never assume the worst characteristics of being home again, whatever home even meant. But this modest house would be my home for the foreseeable, so I decorated it lovingly with collections of masks, pictures and records. I bought simple, stylish furniture and sat for long hours screwing in and slotting together pieces of wood, following instructions with a grinning version of a stickman. My house had the added bonus of free on-street parking, an unthinkable luxury in other cities. My car fit neatly in front of the house, like they came as a set. The sleek Japanese lines of its body sat snugly between either end of the small brick wall that marked the boundary of the property. It was satisfying to peek through the hanging blinds in the upstairs study and see it parked symmetrically in front. But if it wasn't, or I couldn't, well, that was fine too. Until it wasn't. And sure enough, as I rerouted myself in a city familiar and unfamiliar in equal measure, the need to come home and park in my space began to grow. It started as a slight niggle, irritating like a paper cut or a mild muscle strain that any other kind of distraction would soon make me forget. Before long, however, that niggle grew into a more stubborn injury, a dull pain that refused to fully subside. I'd find myself increasingly enraged to come home and find someone in my space, which would require me to temporarily slot into the no man's land between a stranger's bumper and the neighbouring church entrance. I'd sit inside, unable to relax, twitching the blinds, listening for the telltale sound of an ignition or the sudden burst of headlights that would briefly illuminate the front room. I'd always managed to reclaim my rightful spot, and if the person was still in their car, I'd make a blustery entrance onto the street, slamming the garden gate in frustration as I huffed and puffed to my car. The offender couldn't care less, of course. As far as they were concerned, any open spot on the street was fair game. Occasionally the neighbour's son would park further up and leave me a space in between him and his father, but this was the exception, not the rule. Eventually what had started as a niggle and graduated to a pain became a screaming migraine, a constant stabbing ache that would not relent, and so there was only one thing for it. There was only one way to keep my space: to not leave it vacant. And so I started to find reasons not to use the car, instead taking the new bus service into town. I'd walk if it was close enough, and if I'd been in two minds about going to something in the first place, the thought of driving and not knowing what I'd find when I got home would tip me over. When I did drive, I'd find myself quietly stressing about whether my space would be free when I got back. Turning the corner of my street, I'd accelerate the last little bit in excitement to get parked up as tightly to the curb as I could. Sometimes the parking would go smoothly and I'd slot effortlessly back into my space, but other times I'd fly into an uncontrollable rage, slamming the wheel, swearing and vowing to move house. Then I'd park as aggressively close to the latest offender's bumper as my insurance would allow. I began going out to less and less things as time went on, and the invites dried up accordingly. My biggest consolation, though, was the neatly parked car, resplendent in its proper place out front, sitting in what was defiantly my parking space. On the rare occasions I'd still attend things, or on the walks I took in the park around the corner, the only thing I could think about was the car in my space. I began to imagine that somehow, when I came back, it would be moved. I didn't know how, or who would even bother, or why. But perhaps there was a way to loosen the handbrake and dunt the car forwards or backwards, the way I'd seen in Paris or Rome, to steal my space. My pace would quicken as I approached the house in trepidation, but the car was always there, exactly where I'd left it, albeit looking a little sadder somehow and less shiny. Small droplets of water seemed trapped forever inside the casing of the rear lights, and a dark green moss had now sprouted around the rubber trim of the doors. But my car was in my parking space, exactly where I wanted it to be, and that was the most important thing. As weeks multiplied into months, any outings on foot became so overwhelmed by this fear it was pointless to even go out. And gradually I stayed closer and closer to home until, incrementally, I stopped leaving the house altogether. That was over 2 years ago, and my universe is now the walls of this house and its tiny pebble garden. I can eternally escape into films and TV shows and live multiple interesting lives online. My shopping gets delivered, and I exercise with the help of 2 machines I bought on a reseller site. Now they're in the living room, so I can cycle and row while watching the car framed perfectly in the bay window at the front. If I'm stuck and can't have something sent to the house, I can still call on a couple of remaining friends, too old and too loyal to abandon me completely to my own devices. When it's sunny, I sit outside in the front garden on an old canvas camping chair, dreaming of off-street parking and wondering where cars and passers-by are headed. And I watch my car, permanently motionless and ever sadder since I long stopped turning the engine over. Its once glossy finish has become a lifeless matte, and the 2 curbside tires almost completely flat, causing it to sit at an angle, as if trying to lean closer to the house, begging to be revived.
I'm Nigel Kent. And this is my poem, Exiles. We remember that day, with its black scribble on the paper sky, like a signature scrawled on a warrant. We watched it grow, squirming and writhing as it braved the swell of the wind, until it reached our garden. A buzzing cloud that sent neighbours' children screaming indoors, that saw windows slammed and the limits of fences cursed. But nothing could deter it from the refuge of our rowan tree. I suppose we could have listened to our neighbours, paid for someone to dispose of their problem discreetly. But we hired a hive instead, housed them, saw the street's flowers flourish from our exiles' industry. Though there would never be enough honey to sweeten the neighbours muttering indoors about invasion and betrayal, who rallied only for the day's real news of refugees unloaded from vans and bundled onto a plane for processing like sacks of meat well past their sell-by date.
The boathouse. I put my watch to my ear to check if it is still working, even though it is not the kind of watch that ticks. Do watches tick anymore? Mine is a Patek Philippe Nautilus. It can do lots of things. It self-winds for one. That's useful. I don't have time in my life for winding a watch. My wife bought me this watch for my 50th birthday. Ex-wife. Still getting used to that one. I wanted a weekend in Amsterdam. I wanted to get off my face and into another dimension. When I told her that, she smiled, and a few days later gave me this watch. I keep it for special occasions. I would feel guilty if I didn't wear this expensive lump of metal that someone who no longer loved me bought for my birthday 2 weeks before she asked for a divorce. The point is, it doesn't tick. I'm pretty sure it is working. I've just lost track of time. That happens when you're in a dark place. I am in a dark place, figuratively and literally. The old boathouse windows are boarded up. Too many trigger-happy young lads around who like taking shots at old buildings after a few beers. I'm showing my age again. They probably don't even drink beer. No doubt they snort something or smoke something. If I had a teenage son, I would know, but I don't. I shoot blanks, medically speaking, so the line stops with me. The hardware still does what I want it to do. The fact that the programming is faulty stopped bothering me a long time ago. I am a 50-year-old man, free to go where I like, and I am locked inside an old boathouse at the end of my parents' garden. There are worse places to be. The light is filtering through the slatted boards on the window. I watch dust motes dance gaily in the beam and feel the last of the whiskey I guzzled at lunch buzz through my veins. I'm starting to sober up. This I do not want. I was quite happy to be intoxicated. I put my all into it, ignoring the looks from my mother and my sister Sandra. I kick at the ground, raising more dust around me where I sit, back to the wall. My back is to the wall. I shut my eyes and lean back. I slide my head left and right across the stucco. It feels like a massage. When last did a human hand touch me? Touch my head? My eyes fill with tears. I squeeze my lids tight. I will not cry. I could pay someone to touch me, not in a seedy way, a masseuse, a proper one, in a legitimate spa. I open my eyes again and look to the ceiling. There is a nest up there. I have no clue what kind of nest it is. I know nothing about birds. I am not very well up on ornithology. My father was. He loved sitting in the garden, watching the birds flitting around the feeder. He would write their names, the time of their visit, and how many there were in a small, spiral-topped notebook, keeping track. For what? I slip my hand into my pocket and take out the notebook. I flick through it. The neat, measured handwriting flickers past like animation. I hold it to my nose, to seek some trace of him, but it just smells of paper. I never knew about the birds. Sandra told me. She put in the hours here with him. And she put in the hours trying to convince me to talk to him, to mend fences before it was too late. I get to my feet slowly, easing out the stiffness in my knees. I brush at the dust coating my pants and brace myself to go back in, finish the job, shake the hands, thank the priest, talk to Mum about the headstone. Then I might take that bottle of whiskey home and finish it off too. I turn the key, open the door and step out into the evening light.
Hi, my name is Owen Cahill, and this is a poem called Bird Nest in the Vent. Working at the kitchen table in an empty house, I'm startled to my feet by a clattering in the cupboards. There's an animal in there. I stand rooted, waiting for a creature to emerge, realise the sound is from above. The vent to the extractor fan must be why it isn't working. I go out the back door to take a look. Half the vent cover is broken away. A bird appears from inside, I don't know what kind, and stands perched on the rim, a bouncer at the door of an edgy new club. The bird looks at me as if to say, What? What are you going to do? I go back inside and listen as the bird makes its way back in, then hear a chorus of shrill chirping. A young family in there. Must be nice and warm at the moment. Last night when I used the frying pan, the whole room filled with smoke. I had to open the windows to let the smoke out and the cold in, which isn't ideal. But what are you going to do? Note 1. In Ireland, all birds, their nests and eggs are protected by the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981. Note 2. In Ireland, a ban on evictions of humans ended on March 31st, 2023.
This is Sheridan Hall reading my poem On the Bridge. Wind catches in the empty boat racks above my car, roaring around our silence, which, like the river we are crossing, is calm and smooth under the clouds. This river is one thing we both call home, and wider than it is deep. But we need not say this. It's enough to note the rust and turn the radio off, to remain quiet, letting November shape our mood. Traffic hums steadily. You said once you can only hold people in mind when you're in the same room with them. I'm the opposite. My loneliness carries everyone I love. Then I unravel if we gather. Where does this difference leave us? Brother and sister on an aging bridge, halfway to the airport, sharing a thick silence, our common habit, one we know will break on the busy curb into words and bags.
Winter's harvest. They have lived in the caravans for a long time. The vans are parked in a field that opens onto the beach, only a ragged hedge to separate them. They are parked side on, the sleeping areas taking the brunt of the wind that swoops in from north and east, alternating, scouring. It is monotonous work getting at the periwinkles. Once the girls passed a magazine from one to another that gave periwinkle blue as a desirable fashion colour. They had asked each other if the colour was meant to be the winkle itself, or the colour of their hands after 10 minutes on a winter morning picking through the slapping seaweed. Uncle didn't believe in wearing gloves for the job, said gloves slowed them down. They live by the tides. Uncle has some way of knowing tides. For the girls it is always a surprise. Always hauled out of bed from deepest sleep to walk across the spit of sand that appears when the tide is low. The eldest of them, Greta, can read the language, the sign that says there is 45 minutes from low tide until the way is cut off. They are fast, but the tiny empty island always looks closer than it is, receding over the curve of the earth as they walk towards it. Then 12 hours, less or more, digging out tiny snails that will be eaten in restaurants, cooked in wine and butter. Greta says that when she gets away, she will never eat another thing from the sea for as long as ever she lives. The others nod agreement, dreaming of stewed beef and carrots, pork with its fat cooked to a crisp, plump chickens roasted in their own stock. Nothing with a rasp of salt, of the iodine of the sea for its taste. Summer's warmth would have been a respite for their cracked and blistered fingers, but summer isn't a time for picking winkles. In summer, the winkles are busy reproducing, making winter's harvest. In summer, the girls have other things to sell. They live by their tides. The girls all bleed on schedule, a week of fights and scratches, then tears into pain. It comes from living all together, one of them says, maybe Greta. Greta is their de facto leader, the eldest, tallest, loudest. Greta isn't with them the day it happens. She would probably have known what to do. Uncle walks them out to the island, ropes off the area they are to work on, tells them the time he will return, but doesn't. It is dark and the sea is angry. When it parts to allow them back to land, they wait for Uncle, but he doesn't come. They watch the water drain away to nothing, watch the bare stripe of sand rise up in the moonlight, but they stay where they are because that's what Uncle has told them, and he's not there to say different. And Greta isn't there. They wait and they wait. The sea crowds in again, hungry. One of them has matches stolen from somewhere. They gather dry sticks, set some wind-roughened grass alight. They shiver in a circle around as the fire catches and flares. The island is tiny, no trees on it to slow the wind. It is not a place where people live, just a place of grass and stones. The waves lash down around the island, and they don't hear it. They don't hear it, and the first they know of the boat is bright torches shining in their faces. People in bright yellow uniforms, official. Blankets, voices they can't understand. When they get back to the land, hot soup that they devour in the building where the lifeboat is kept. They warm through, but shiver when Uncle arrives. His face is all storms. They don't understand many of the words between him and the people who rescued them from the freezing night. Greta would know, but Greta isn't here. They look from Uncle to these uniformed people, fear and incomprehension frozen on their faces. Greta is bleeding when they arrive back to the caravan. It isn't her time. None of the others are bleeding. The full moon is not pulling their tides down, down, down. Uncle is angry, and pale Greta whispers there is trouble. They are moving on, moving up the coast to somewhere new. New cold shores with snails to pick with torn fingers, and all the other things they are made to do. Uncle drinks his medicine and sleeps. The youngest of them are crying softly in the long night. The others are tending to Greta, her eyes dull, hair slick with sweat. Her fever rises with the hours, and they have nothing but damp cloths to offer. She tells them to run, run while Uncle sleeps, and maybe those people who saved them from the island might still be there to save them again. Go, 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 she tells them before falling into shallow sleep. They creep quietly from the caravan, all of them but Greta, who is in too much pain from her bleeding to move, and watch the full moon draw a path across the sea to the island. They have no torches, nothing to light their way. There was nothing for them to gather together, no clothes or money or papers. They will follow the path the moon makes. They hope that maybe it will lead them, all of them but Greta, back to where the people and the blankets and the soup made them safe. But they will follow the moonlight, all of them except Greta, on the land or the shining trail across the water to somewhere they can, in one way or another, be free.
Final Call by Tolu Okunlesi. The pylons refuse to huddle for safety. The boatmakers will not be silenced by the even song of fire or lightning, and the smokehouses will continue their sacrifice of fish and firewood. There will be a final boarding call for the last boat out of here, full of islanders who've lost everything except the fear of losing everything. Every new storm opens a fresh ledger. No two skies or demolitioners are the same. The end, full of voice and volume, keeps arriving, drowning out the final boat call.
I am Chris Cottam, and this is my story. In a forest in Finland, I find a sawmill, and the narrator is a woman. I slip silently off hike through the trees, seduced by the buzz of wood surrendering to metal. At a clearing is an age-old barn, its timbers weathered to silver. Inside, a machine saw rasps. Back on the trail, you wait unseen, doubtless checking your GPS smartwatch. Kneeling before a perfumed heap of pumpkin orange sawdust, I tunnel up to my elbows. It's fresh with resin and rich in memory, damp with the tears of pines brought low. Pulling a springy double handful to my face, I inhale it deep to my lungs before scrubbing it around my neck and down to the top of my breasts. I lift my shirt and scour fistfuls, coarse and moist, around my stomach. The sawmill I knew in my childhood, in the Forest of Dean, is now a cul-de-sac of 7 deathly bungalows. It's decades since its charge hand, old booty mayo, gardened for my grandparents after work, nurturing runner beans and rhubarb, cauliflowers and carrots. I conjure fragrant lavender, the sweet taste of blackberries, and the magic morning tracery of dew-wet spiders' webs along the hawthorn hedge. Back across soundless pillows of pine needles, you've been drawing stickmen in the dust with your walking pole. You're a man I no longer know. Okay, you ask? I say nothing. Nothing's okay. You lollop on and I trudge after you. Once I loved to ride the trunks of your thighs, to tangle my fingers through your thicket of hair and scrape my cheeks against the thorns of your stubble. Our holiday has 3 days left. We agree to stop being we, hug at the airport, and lie about keeping in touch. I cancel my flight and head for the wilderness. This time deeper, this time alone. Starting with my back to the Baltic, on the cusp of the Turku archipelago, I trek north towards Lapland, hoping for wolves. Drinking from ice blue waterfalls, I see not a soul as I walk for days, plunging naked and screaming into Lake Matildanjärvi to bathe. The forest is dark, dense, and forever, with enough trees for 1,000 sawmills. But I don't find another. And I find myself weeping for a life I haven't led.
Song of the Selkie. Selkie, seal woman, shape-shifting thing, longing to feel like a girl, came ashore with her friends to strip off fur, frolic in the moonlight for a while before returning to sea. He appeared, stole her fur. Selkie must become his wife, to roam in a place not her own for as long as he kept hold of her skin. Unable to speak the way humans do, she remained silent. Her throat tightened to a lump. Selkie lost her voice and lost her song, until the day she discovered her fur under the staircase in a corner of a cupboard usually kept locked. Slipped into herself, she saw her voice had been there all along, fixed in every grain of sand, cut in every shell on the beach by the house where she'd lived since that night in the moonlight with her friends. Selkie swam away, as is her nature. Her song chimed again to merge with the waves and the call of the whales.
Helen Anderson, Forward Address. Peel on that same old blouse, the one he once said he liked, with blue seersucker stripes stamped with swallows in flight. In that same old blouse, he will know you when he comes back. I know how you fret about changing that old hearthrug, this old vase, the old front door, that he will not know where you live now, that you did not cut him a key. I know how you slept on the floor, not sleeping when the bed gave way, how they said he would not want your spine to scream, that he would not have wanted you to hate the replacement that refuses to sit in the old carpet's grooves. I know you found no joy in stretching your skeleton's spaces. How you hope he knows you are trying, how you whisper to his pillow, good night and sorry, and can you see how I am keeping my promise to look after that boy of ours? As death hissed in, how you heard him voicelessly promise back to look after that girl of yours up there. I love you. I will never not. Throw on this new dress, one he never got to see. This one with ochre moons, sequin stars and elaborate sleeves. Glide the bed onto the floorboards of the old spare room, where the shadows are softer. Take or leave those trinkets. Gloss that door with a pink shock. Move house, town, country, world if you need or want to. He knows where to find you.
Winter Withdrawal by Sarah Doyle. Fingertips clawed raw, I have buried myself beneath layers of December, tunnelling winter's dark earth like a mole clothed in tumulus. Strata of shortened days stack themselves above me. The world seems not to turn in the belowscape where there is no word for weak. We all have our reasons for being here. I was minding solitude, yet found comfort in a cohort of other excavators, slow-moving, soft-bodied. We make a company of quiet. Lately, I am doughy in my burrow, but in this unlit state where shy and hide sound alike in the muddy vernacular, I seek and find seams of sanctuary, precious, rare. Let January dawn, February too. I have learned to live without light or air.
Our final section in the journal is called Sanctum, and we open with a poem by Kathy Fowley, followed by Dan Berwick, Rosemary Tumulty, Brett Ashley, Sue Finch, Devon Neal, Anne-Marie Dunn, and Nithi Casa.
Hi, I'm Kathy Fowley, and this is my poem, Driving Directions for Soul Cleansing. Start from Westport. No one would ever start from anywhere else. Follow the signs if you can, drive slow on the twisting road until you see Croagh Patrick. Gaze upon it, smile at the scattering of snow near the small church at the top, and leave it behind. Suddenly on your right, all the blues in the world have gathered in Clubay, flirting with depth, playing with greys and greens. They will plunge into your eyes and flow, steady and calm, through your body and your mind. Let them guide you to Louisburg, to the small road on the right that leads to Carramore. Already, the world is silent behind you. Right ahead, Clare Island stands guard over you. Let the sand smile under your feet. Let the wind brush salt water on your face. A ray of sun warm your skin and dry it. Hear the swish of ancient stones hush you and soothe you. Breathe.
Blue Remembered by Dan Berwick. That wet autumn dirt smell, that crushed brittle leaf smell, that bush that just flowers at this time of year smell, that warm water fountain that tasted like pennies, that tangerine pop they don't make anymore, that stale chocolate taste of old Easter egg candy, that sky that was bluer than any blue sky is, that house down the street where that girl down the street lived, that cloud that held nothing more fearful than rain, that.
This is Rosemary Tumulty reading Monday Morning Mist. Monday Morning Mist. With the sea breeze whipping at my face, I turn my back on the wind, on life. My hair sticks to salt-streaked cheeks, binding as fingers on my exposed neck. I gasp for breath. A solitary seagull soars overhead, wings extended catching the updraft, its body then plummeting streamlined through bruised, angry clouds. Its soulful screech and plaintive cries of loss, pain, and emptiness engulf me. Or is this my core calling out to the ether? Are these sounds being emitted from my throat, my fractured heart? I hardly know anymore. A scream howls on the wind. I can hear the child I lost calling to me, haunting my days, disturbing my nights. My child, my flesh and blood, gone from within my body, ripped by premature labor from its womb embrace. The attempt at consoling words from family and friends, simply salt rubbed into that weeping wound. I don't want their words, their pity. I want to gaze into the soft, unfocused eyes of my newborn baby, rub my nose on the soft down of her little head, cradled in the safe embrace of my hands, smell that milk-laden baby scent, rejoice at the cooing and suckling sounds at my breast. My inner being screams with anger at an unjust life. Months later, my mind and body have no recognition of the cobbled roads or concrete slab pavements of before. I am a stranger to the streets and paths I once knew. Now there is only after. Muscle memory pulls me to the grassy slopes, fast-running streams, forested hillsides, and soaring mountains of my youth, foothills of home. Summits beckon in primeval fashion, luring onwards, always upwards. Like Icarus, the sky awaits my fall. I find myself in the stillness of an early Monday morning at the foot of the mountain, mist hovering over valley and glen. The world behind me lies sleeping. My physical efforts, a savage assault to clear mind and soul, spur me on. Slievegulion beckons. Seeking succor, I make my way beneath the leaf canopy of ancient oak and ash. I can almost hear the Cailleach bearer whispering my name, summoning me to be old before my time, her hag-like skepticism mocking me, ridiculing my every step, the push and pull, urging me forwards, then goading me into retreat, lambasting my efforts, a body weak and weary beneath her assault, the desire to surrender overwhelming, a mind begging for sanctuary. But with one foot simply following the other, I stay on my chosen path to conquer the summit. My feet move onwards of their own accord, scrambling up the shaded glen, solitary birdsong and accompaniment. A stream gurgles at my feet. Pausing, I glance up. Light dances and catches, playing on the underside of the leafy oak-festooned canopy, dispersing the chill. Warmth creeps into my weary bones. Breaking free of cover, at last I reach the summit. Scooping handfuls of cool water from the lake, I douse face, neck, and arms, the sheen of perspiration mingling with the pale liquid gold. From the trig point of Slievegulion, I stand in awe at what nature presents before me. The entire ring dike formation plays out about me, my body at its central hub. With the early morning mist rising and clearing in pockets, I am humbled by the gradual reveal, both within my heart and that which lies before me, the richness of culture, heritage, and beauty, rolling drumlins guiding the eye to far-off landscapes of soil and sea, of home. I stand in awe. The solitude brings me peace. Today this mountain is mine. Montague's words spring to mind, and in the moment are apt, like dolmens round my childhood, the old people. Today, as I recall the words of my family, my friends, they lend me comfort, embracing my bruised and weary heart. Looking far down into the valley below, Monday morning mist, her name redolent of mystery, tradition, and purity, grace. Yes, this is who bathes me. Now, with my back pressed to the primeval granite stones of Gullion's passage tomb, I face due west and wonder at the souls who came here some 6,000 years ago, stones aligned to embrace the winter solstice sunset, rays welcomed to its core. I throw my head back, eyes closed, my face bathed in sunlight. With hands splayed on the rocks behind me, the wind plays with my hair. This sanctum of place and time nurture my soul. This moment gives me pause. Flagellated by demons of time, of circumstance, their weight momentarily bears down upon me. My hand flutters to the gnawing emptiness at my core. The Cailleach bearer's susurration of sorrow feeds on my grief. Her gnarled teeth prey on my body, my mind. My knees buckle. Like Christ on the steps, the cross digs deep. Tears course down my cheeks, and yet I tear myself from the ground to stand once again, trembling in the face of revelation. Like souls from thousands of years before, I am here and I am whole, mind and body clear. I breathe. A fresh breeze dances through my hair. To be cleansed, healed by place is a rare and beautiful gift. Now that I have become reacquainted with nature, re-engaged with life, I can feel my inner core being recharged once again. I feel replenished. I have faith that zephyr winds will carry me to their bosom. This is my time, my place, my life. I shall not fall.
My name is Brett Ashley. My poem, A Shade Garden. What wondrous life is this I lead? Andrew Marvell's The Garden. In a small shaded backyard, slate-edged flower beds rise on four sides, thick with blood-red impatience. A lone woman guards her garden, saves her sanctum's buds from scores of slugs who slime a path across the ledges. Seated in her faded folding chair, she sips a scotch, rattles the ice, smokes Virginia Slims. She lifts small pruning shears from her aging lap, leans over, aims, and begins to slice, and with each clip, blade scraping on slate, she cuts a slug in half. Snip, snip, snip. For the late arrivals, she pours a saucer of beer, leaving it on the ledge to lure them in. She will find them in the light of early morning, dead drunk, mostly dead, their slime now diluted with drops of dew.
My name is Sue Finch, and this is my poem. You are glorious. Taking your waltz on this dance floor that is not always a dance floor, you are glorious. You are making the air shine above these newly polished boards that have been bored by meetings, heavied by sold-out concerts, scratched by the pushback of too many chairs. I want this moment in a snow globe, so I can watch imaginary flakes fall around you time and again. I would dust it with reverence.
Devin Neal, the menu at Mom's house. Tenderloin dinner, pork plank, pan-fried, brown and iceberg lard, served with crunchy cornbread and kidney beans, gravy offered on weekends. Fried chicken, cornstarch crusted chicken dipped in cast iron grease bath, boxed macaroni pearls covered in extra cheese, barbecue sauces in the fridge. Pork roast and potatoes, chunks of meat and russets slow cooked while at work, fried cabbage speckled black. Clean your plate before you get up. Bacon, extra crispy, eat it how you want. Served with sliced fried potatoes with ketchup. There's toast and always fresh tomatoes. Sirloin steak, well done, can't have that pink. Served with A1. Baked potatoes sparkling in gemstone foil. Was always your dad's favorite. Breakfast for dinner. Scrambled eggs blanketed with American cheese, biscuits and gravy, or fried bologna on lean weeks. I'll save your leftovers on the stovetop.
Anne-Marie Dunn, fixing up brewski. I bring the best of the house that was sold. The china cabinet with the Art Deco decanter, the 1960s kitchen table made of formica, the ironing board that is older than me, her New York dresser still pristine and polished. The parlour is dry-lined, plastered and painted, the gutters cleaned, moss scraped off the roof, French doors for the kitchen to let in the garden, fresh white paint both inside and out, a yellow front door to finish it off. Ruski, its wildness a refuge, our escape from suburban drab Dublin. Now it's in a new round of renewal, now it's my turn to sit in the garden, as ancestors sing in the shush of the ash.
A river for on after the decades of centenaries. By God's design its seed will grow another. The bay leaf, the common, the butcher's broom the florist cuts each year. Her very hands are cotyledons. From that which have worn the threads and spindles and handled a ruffle somewhere down the line. Now the twizzle spins are its foe to face. It tackles it. First, a base framed to a circle. This notion that one life is a run of another, and the other to never meet an end. A moulding like a Sarah land in the ocean where a boat can dock at any point. Leaves inlined like comrades in a tear, their epigenic memories imparted from the soil that keeps it, feet bare, to fill the waves of songs the soldiers long gone drummed. A lament the wet land will not forget. And we remember Stonebreaker's yard, and danced the vocal call with bowed heads. When done with wiring the leafing, hiding the workings, the laurel, the citadel holds it a shrine. At the forefront of the break of light, to day's dawn, till the blades give in to the fasting, attesting a courage unjust even then to have to be called upon, as it rots and crisps to a dust that mustn't be pitied. This reef no man's head can fit, a solace at city's reveille, lacking ray worth, bare and sterile, not a nimbus, but it is a reef of her own.
And finally, part 2 of our third section, Sanctum, features Patrick Osada, Dominic J. Sweeney, Mark Stewart, Karen Mooney, Mo Schoenfield, Terry Metcalf, Anik Yerim, David Hanlon, Rosie Morris, Yvonne Nusullivan, and P. D. Lyons.
Sanctuary, read by Patrick Osada. Sanctuary, along the river Tresillian in Cornwall. The stillness of this place is quite profound. When waters slack beyond the wooden quay, just wind and silence are the only sounds. A heron stands inert as if becalmed, no curlew song or gull's cacophony. The stillness of this place is quite profound. Across the mud flats egrets can be found, white dots in clusters perched in Merthyrs trees. Here wind and silence are the only sounds. Tresempor Pond now flanks this path and ground. Its trees and bushes hold faint sounds of bees. The stillness of this place is quite profound. Spiralling buzzards turn and turn around, circle St. Clement's Well, its scrub and ivy. Yet wind and silence are the only sounds. This spot is where tranquility is found, with mind and nature joined in harmony. The stillness of this place is quite profound, when wind and silence are the only sounds.
Hello everybody, my name is Dominic J. Sweeney and this is my poem Balms. Balms. The work season ended. Sat with his body. As the night yawned, he stretched long, its mouth perched neck, awaiting its cool kiss. The oil dripped slowly, scented space softly. So gentle he arose, delicate, lightly drifted, fabled, rid of ambition, restored by a Grecian urn.
The Chariot of Achilles by Mark Stewart. The seagrass that sings in the wind like the sonorous chimes of a whale song or church bells drowned in a flood. The sea wreck that speaks of ships long lost to the deep. The dunes that hum with the voices of ages past, with the merest lament for the empty ocean. The pale lagoons and the tidal creeks that whisper your name. The briny taste of your lips on mine, your damp hair a lingering caress upon my cheek as I gaze at the waves that have taken you from me. The sea is sanctum, as haven as refuge, the place that calls to me with the same whispering voice I once knew so well, with your voice, with the imprecations of the Kelpie, the witching song that beckons from the shore, calling to the spectral tides of the moon, to the silver seas of that phantom world. The walls of the sanctum are crumbling now. They have been breached too often by the combined forces of pollution, overfishing, and global warming, a modern-day mongrel horde, but they hold fast, still in the open ocean far from land. The final redoubt, the inner sanctum of a once golden citadel, where life flourished as it can only in the ocean. Where better for my fugitive self to flee to? All I need is a boat, a compass heading, and a fair wind. With those, the nautical trinity, maybe I can even outflee the illness that walks in my footsteps like a second shadow. Let me state it plainly. You are my Troy. The walls that kept the outside world at bay, with its malicious diseases, the pandemics and cancers, walls that could not and did not survive without you, leaving nothing between me and the armies of Armageddon. So I know just how Hector felt when he found himself confronting those murderous hordes, and Achilles in particular. That's what my cancer feels like, the indomitable prince of the Imperium, a disease that doesn't even have that one principal weakness at its heels, offering no means by which its victims might strike back. I fully expect the disease to lash my body to the back of its chariot and parade me outside the walls of the citadel, just as Achilles did with Hector, but not until I've eluded the invader for far as long as possible. As you said to me once, to cheat death, all you have to do is stay alive. So stay alive. Our drawbridge weekends, you called them, lowering the portcullis on a Friday evening and not raising again until Monday morning, keeping the world and its mischief at arm's length for that all too short interval, the eye of the storm captured and held in place, if only for a brief while. What was it John Fowles said in one of his novels? Something along the lines of, "Art is like life, you have to make a world of your own, and then surround that world with whatever defences you can muster." Another one of your maxims. It's us versus everyone else, and I don't intend to lose. Standing next to, I always felt like a foot soldier, standing next to Odysseus or Jason, invincible in the company of a prince of Ithaca or the captain of the Argonauts. The arrows and the javelins might fly, but they would never strike me down. The long boats drawn upon the shore, and ahead the task of scaling the walls of the city. But what does that matter in the company of gods? That's how I used to feel walking into my cancer checkups. But now that you are gone, my courage, as King Theon might have said, hangs by a thread. And too often, even in summer, there is a cool damp chill in the air, the one that Robert Falcon Scott remarked upon when he stood upon the South Pole, contemplating the return trek to a supply depot in safety, and wondering if he and his party could do it. In my more fanciful moments, I imagine that you've left a trail of breadcrumbs or their pelagic equivalent, a path of plankton or kelp, for me to follow over the waves, leading to the sea caverns, to the halls and chambers of a submerged mansion where you have taken refuge from your ancestral enemy, those that hunt the sea with net and line and harpoon. A host of porpoises darting about the sunken towers, the way gulls and petrels mew about the attics of a sea castle. The daughter of Neptune back with her people after her brief foray upon the land. And also, for the record, I'll state this plainly too. I don't blame you for leaving, for going back to the sea. It was after all your home, and still is. For most people, the sea is a painted vista based on their memories of the ocean, more often acquired during holidays and vacations, those recollections resembling a piece of stage scenery. The bric-a-brac that accumulates at the back of the mind, like the half-forgotten debris of an old attic. The contents of that particular memory box have all the veracity and authenticity of a picture postcard, the mnemonic equivalent of a box of fudge purchased in a tourist shop in the hope of offsetting the harsher seasons to come when the holiday is over. The wild sea, the sea that can sink a ship and erase all traces of her crew, is a largely unknown elemental force. That was the ocean you revealed to me, sweeping away the phony stage set, revealing the terror that must grip the heart of a mariner in the very moment of his doom, when a rogue wave falls upon his vessel like the flanks of a collapsing mountain range. I remember telling you about the recurring dream I kept having. The two of us standing in what felt like an alpine meadow somewhere in the Tyrol, admiring the view. "Look at those peaks," I say, and after a few seconds you reply, "Those aren't peaks, they're waves." And then I see what you mean, the mountainous waves, the tsunami that's heading straight for us. Too late to run, to do anything other than follow the gradient with our eyes as it climbs against the sky until it all but overtops us both. The point being that the waves of the sea's imperium are moving, no longer offering sanctuary, but instead advancing on land to drown the army that has so long laid siege to those very same walls. The sea giving up its dead in the final battle between man and nature. There are times when I feel overwhelmed by the twin diagnosis of cancer and diabetes, the ongoing treatment that entails, my own personal defences giving away like that sea castle, its walls eroding under the onslaught of wind and tide, under the slow cataclysm of time. And then I remember you and your brightness of being. I can think of no other way to put it. That luminosity you wore like a robe that kept the bad news at bay. An aura as impenetrable as the shield carried by Leonidas Thermopylae, the Spartans stacking their dead in that narrow pass to stop the Persians from ransacking the whole of Greece. A whole different type of sanctuary wall. And a phrase that such contemplations have placed in my mind, like a piece of driftwood caught in a tidal pool. How bright was the flame that long fought the dark, not just a reference to my faltering resolve, but to the benign flame that burned inside of you, setting up your skin aglow. A luminescence borrowed, as if from the moon, a beacon that now draws me back to the shore like a wrecker's lamp. My own skin seems pale and lacklustre by comparison, like the skin of a drowned man. But all is not lost. Stay alive, you said, and that's what I mean to do. The world turns no matter what, and there's always another tide to catch. I am for the sea, if the sea will have me, if its gates are not yet barred to my kind. Somewhere in the lesser-known coves of the Sussex coastline, a boat waits for me, a compass and a logbook stashed beneath the tarpaulin that hides it from every eye, save mine. A boat which once belonged to you, the mistress of the tides, gifted to me for the journey I now need to make into the eye of the storm, the last refuge for the truly desperate of heart. When the time comes, I'll draw the tarpaulin back to reveal the blue hull, the freshly painted livery of the vessel which bears the name you gave it, written in your own hand in a golden script, the Chariot of Achilles.
My name's Karen Mooney, and I'm delighted that Damien and Nithy selected my poem St. Cooey's Wells for inclusion alongside so many other wonderful voices. The Whales are situated 2 miles outside Portaferry on the Ards Peninsula in Northern Ireland, and they have a reputation for healing, and certainly the number of rags attached to the nearby thorn trees attests to the Whales' reputation. St. Cooey's Whales. An unseasoned serenity oozes from deep within this hillside to trickle hope upon all who visit. Pools from which to drink, wash and bathe eyes invite stretched hands. A tree blossoms in prayer. Nearby, an altar fills with offerings of prayerfully placed pebbles laid in hope and remembrance. Breathing untrafficked air with only the thrum of nature for company, I am warmed by the sun as I slow to the flow of the sleepy, soothing stream. Like others, I carefully undress. Setting down my rucksack of remorse, shrugging off my coat of constant news, I slip out of the boots I have been attempting to fill, to feel weightless, vulnerable and free. Free as the stream reaching forth to be purified and preserved by the salty kiss of the sea.
Hi, I'm Mo Schoenfeld, and my poem is called Tree Hugger. A whistle of wind, cheek against the bark, arms full. Just us two, alone. Bluebells mingle with rapeseed. No demands for backstory.
Hello, my name is Terry Metcalf, and my poem is called Nidra, a Sanskrit word meaning to draw forth a state of nothingness. Nidra. I had forgotten how the dark can comfort, not the black dead night, nor the birth of morning, not that time in the autumn dusk when nature presents its sanctuary and birds sing their truth. Not stepping into the air of a twilight world where moss grows damp with blessings. Not where the sun becomes an ordinary star, throwing its spotlight on the moon, who laughs like a freed woman. But the dark where the engine mind closes, where eyes pressed blank with metal cease their quivering, where it could be said a mirror stays dry but for one cool droplet.
Your smile, a cathedral, cool haven brightened by summer-stained glass, gentle blue torn open like cornflower sky, green-shaded path, murmuring stream of everything and after, answer to anything unprayed.
Hi, my name is David Hanlon, and my poem is titled In His Bed. Here, beside him, on this firm yet soft bed, his sweet and musky scent roots into the earth of me, my right arm stretched overhead, flesh half covering one eye, frames his face between white cotton peaks. Here, where time is fresh dough, rolled out by tenderness.
Hello, I'm Rosie Morris, and this is my poem, Touchstone. Waking from menstrual dreams, For one blood-split second, I imagine myself ripe still, until by light of day I see a crone in my skin, my once youth picked clean and dry. I sigh and trace the contours of a land no longer taut or plush. I yearn, you see, to dive and swim in heat and flood, in surge and flow, and then to feel again the swell of life in curl, snug in the red depths of my womb, and to give birth in fug of thrill, and press my babe soft into milk-swelled breasts, rocking and dancing her, skin to plump skin. I once craved thinness, but when it stole in, it mocked me, betrayed me, stripping my bones of their cushioning, whittling them down to brittle, my leafed spring become bare winter. My younger self would turn her eyes from the crepe paper loose around my limbs, yet I have come to find it beautiful and true, my testament, my story, weathered, wise. In our dying, we might writhe naked. I have seen this too, this exposure, this fight. Our blue bruised hands might be held. I held his, or might not. Our final breath, it holds a mute and tender truth. We are, as the stuff of life floats, then sinks, our own harbour, our own haven. Nowhere left to run and hide, we are, death compels this, our own touchstone.
Ivan Nihulavon. Fantasy. We do not end up straining naked bodies so entwined that limbs and selves are indistinguishable. We do not lie together, wrapped inside each other, with the stinging sweat salt rubbed into love-scratched skin, both too tired and too reluctant to move. Instead, you rock my broken self into the forgotten haven of a place both warm and small and somehow animal, into a time which you have weaved when my tears have soaked through skin and touched a half-remembered heart, and you cup your palms to all this moisture and help me drink. You hold me through all the nightmare days I had refused. You carve out of yourself a small round space where I can curl inside the comfort of your safekeeping, and for these days of months or years, you fashion me a sacred place where I can fall apart.
Hi, my name is Peter Lyons. I'm going to be reading The Long-Term Healing of Their Lives. The people who had cured themselves from the virus once called language communicated eloquently with their hands, their arms, their eyes, the color of their skin. Impossible to be misunderstood, they learned of the wind's worship of leaves, how the sun with every shadow enjoyed each day by day, and the height of midnight stars all sparkling, happy with the moon, longing for its return. Eventually they forgot the coarseness of verbal abuse, the trickery of its seduction, con of its half-truths, made themselves dwellers on an island, rescuers, healers for those washed up from the deep. Unafraid of reinfection, they let the long-term healing of their lives speak for them. Thank you for listening.
And that is it for today. That is the end of our very special episode, our audio companion to accompany the Storms Issue 3, our journal of poetry, prose and visual arts, performed here on the Eat the Storms Poetry Podcast. Thank you so much to every single person who contributed to this issue to make it so beautiful, to make it such a joy to put together. Thank you to everyone who has submitted to the journal. I wish I had the space to fill it with all of your incredible pieces of poetry, prose and visual art. But hopefully next year we will be back with 2 more issues. We have been supported this year by the Fingal Arts, my local Fingal County Council. So a huge shout out and thank you to them. And also a shout out to you, the listeners who have tuned in. To have tuned in here to the podcast, whether that has been on Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts and iTunes. And to every one of you who so far have purchased a copy of the journal. The journal, of course, is available from the website www.eatthestorms.com. It is also available to buy in Charlie Burns Bookshop in Galway, the Winding Stair Bookcase in Dublin, and No Alibis Bookshop in Belfast. And as I said at the beginning, for details on all of my guests today, on all the contributors, both literary and visual artists, head on over to www.eatthestorms.com, and there in the contributor section you will find a list for all the contributors to issue 3, which has their bios, their photographs and all their social media handles, so you can find and follow and be their fans. As this is just an audio experience, I would like to do a shout out to our visual artists who took part in issue 3. And they include our featured visual artists who opened each section: Joshua Vermillion, Bridget Sweeney, Jeroen Mood, Judith Skillman, J.C. Alfier, Alan Murphy, Karen Pierce Gonzalez, Charity McCardle, D.C. Nobbs, M.P. Pratish, Catherine Brennan, Gaynor Kane, Ellen, Harold, and also myself, I suppose, Damien B. Donnelly. And on behalf of myself, Damien B. Donnelly, and also Nithi Casa, my sub-editor, Fingal County Council, and all of our contributors, thank you so much for tuning in today. This has been Eat the Storms, and until we return with Season 8 in the new year, stay bloody poetic!
Oh, thank you.